I'm in front of the legislator. I'm going to have a little chat to win here. What's your name?
Danny Léger.
Daniel, I got to ask you a question.
Sure, Charles.
You are the president of?
CUPE, Brunswick.
Does it really matter which political party that's in power?
Well, the party that is in power in New Brunswick, unfortunately, it's always gone from liberal to conservative, conservative to liberal. The problem, from my perspective, is either one of those parties seems to want to be a voice for the working people of New Brunswick. Right now, the quagmire we're in is we don't have a third party, if you want. We don't have a third party. Well, let's call.
How come it was a bit weird? Never made any ground. What happened?
Well, she did. She was our voice in the legislature.
Yeah.
You remember back in the 90s when Frank McKenna wanted to privatize the jails.
Yeah.
That's where I come from. I work in a corrections.
Okay.
And Frankie wanted to bring in Wackenham.
Yeah, I remember that.
You must remember that.
Yeah.
How did we push that back? It's because we had one voice in the legislature that stood up day after day after day and rose and brought the dirt out on Wackenham.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's how that was overturned. I'd be working for the private American company today if it wasn't for that lone voice. Now, the ideal political system, as you know as well as I, is a minority government. But you can't have a minority government in a two-party system.
No.
And that's the problem we have. That's why like our federal government, there's checks and balances. In Nova Scotia, there's checks and balances because you have a minority government, and at least you have that third voice.
What do you say of the conservative that comes here and meet the protesters, but when they were in power, they never showed up in any protests? You know, I mean...
Yeah. Well, what it is one thing about a politician always wants to get elected, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I guess that's the bottom line.
What's the old saying of, it's not the politician that makes the decision, it's the bureaucrat. Like a bureaucrat call a politician temporary help.
Exactly.
That's what they call
them tenants.
Tenants, yeah, okay.
Politicians are the tenants,
yeah.
And the senior bureaucrats, they're the ones who own the apartment.
Yeah. And New Brunswick is such a small province.
It is, yeah. It's good. And another thing, Charles, I mean, I don't know if you heard, but just yesterday, PI, small province of PI, just brought in their budget. What did they do? They invested in seniors care. They invested in health care. They didn't lay off their public servants when the people needed the most. Right now is when people are most vulnerable. Because right now, in the economic crisis, people are losing their job, and they're depending on these public services. And this government is... I don't know if they got a crystal ball and they can see something that the rest of the world doesn't see, but they're doing the opposite of what the rest of the world is doing.
What about last April 29th? They voted themselves a $6 million raise in their pension in Crooked.
That's very frustrating.
But there's no money for special care homes.
Well, they did that last spring, and then you've seen in the Telegraph Journal 2 weeks
Irving paper.
In the Irving paper, Minister Boudreau saying, well, you know, these government workers or pension plan, maybe they should go to a defined contribution rather than defined benefit after they just took themselves when the rest of New Brunswick was running for high ground because the St. John River was flooding.
Yeah. Where do you get that? From Robert Jones or my blog?
It probably came from your blog.
No, listen. The bottom line is it really doesn't matter which political party that's in power. And today something like this has to happen almost every week so the people can
get... The people have to be heard. They're not listening. Who are they listening to? They're not listening to the people.
Irving paper.
They're listening to... It's just like private health care. Yeah. Who's calling for private health care? Who? I've gone to I don't know how many meetings and I've asked that question. Who's calling for private health care?
Daniel, merci beaucoup.
All right, Charles.
Talk to you later.